Candidates for the presidency of Ecuador are undertaking their last days of campaign for the general elections to be held on February 7. Opposition organizations and political parties in Haiti remain in the street to reject the widespread insecurity in the country and to demand the President Juvenal Moise step down as his constitutional mandate draws at the end. The 5-year extensions of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty between Russia and the United States START-3 enter into force this Wednesday. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Janet from the studios in teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The candidates for the presidency and vice presidency of Ecuador are undertaking their penultimate day of campaign for the general elections to be held on February 7. The final campaign activities include virtual forums and interviews due to the restrictions imposed by COVID-19. This Wednesday and Thursday, candidates are expected to hold meetings with the electorate to outline their government programs. The candidate for vice president for the Union for Hope coalition, Carlos Rabascal, will close his campaign in the province of Manabí. Meanwhile, Guillermo Lasso, presidential candidate for I Believe movement, announced the closing of his campaign in Quito with a caravan for life. The electoral campaign will officially close on Thursday from 12 p.m. local time, which will give way to the electoral silence period. A leading member of the National Electoral Council of Ecuador has requested that the status of 2 international observers to Sunday's election be revoked. Their request regarding European Parliament member Manuel Pineda and politologist Juan Carlos Monedero was made by the Vice President of the National Electoral Council, Enrique Pita, to the President of the Electoral Authority. The official alleged that the 2 international observers has expressed comments in favor to the presidential candidate for Union for Hope coalition, Andrés Arauz. The move comes just a few hours before the end of the electoral campaign for the general elections to be held on Sunday. In an interview with teleSUR, European Parliament member Manuel Pineda denied his support for Ecuadorian presidential candidate Andrés Arauz. He also noted that he has not yet received formal notification of the request to withdraw his international observer status.
I have not even been formally informed of Vice President Pita's request that I've been withdrawn. I learned of this request through a journalist, and the truth is that it has been a surprise to me. I have not campaigned for any candidate. I am here as an international observer, and my objective to verify how clean and transparent is the process. And I expressed my concern about a possibility that seemed very likely that the electoral process would be suspended and delayed until a later date.
The MEP further added that the authorities of the Electoral Council have now jailed the pressure from certain political sectors that are promoting the suspension of the general elections scheduled for February 7.
Fortunately, the majority of the National Electoral Commission are holding their own and resisting the pressures that are obviously being exerted. And I have to say that the position of Vice President Pita is not new. Already, on my last visit here, in which I met with 4 of the 5 CNN councillors, he was one of those with whom I had the opportunity to meet, and at the end of our meeting, he made some comments that I considered very unfortunate. He said that I appeared to be unaware that Ecuador was no longer a Spanish colony, and that he didn't know why I had come here. Both at that time and now I am here to try to do my bit so that the process is clean and all citizens have the option to choose.
In Ecuador, Union for Hope presidential candidate Andrés Arauz reached a preliminary agreement with Russia for the supply of COVID-19 vaccines. The leader of the Union for Hope coalition said in his Twitter account that the agreement with Russia established the purchase of an important amount of Sputnik V vaccine. Arauz also detailed the upcoming vaccination timetable. The presidential candidate pointed out that this agreement is in addition to the commitment made with Argentina, which will also provide Ecuador with the vaccine. President Alberto Fernandez sent a letter to the presidential candidate committing his country to provide Ecuador with 4.4 million vaccines against COVID-19. The Venezuelan Parliament's Commission for Dialogue with Peace and Reconciliation is advancing in discussions with various social sectors of the country. National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez highlighted the meeting held with representatives of the evangelical Christian congregation from all over the country. Rodriguez indicated that as a result of the discussion with the Sector A, a special subcommission will be formed to make the agreements reached effective. The official also pointed out that one of the most important aspects of the dialogue process is to hold meetings with organic proposals.
It shouldn't be this meeting alone. That shouldn't be the only news that appears in the media. No, it must be an organic meeting in order to take some early conclusions from this meeting with the evangelical congregation. A subcommission will be formed because we also have evangelical pastors who are members of the new National Assembly.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza met with the Foreign Policy Committee of the National Assembly to evaluate the impact of the coercive measures imposed on the country by the United States. In a statement to the press, the diplomat offered details of the meeting.
In these circumstances, we have analyzed the sanctions on the basis of which norms they follow or are supported by, in this case, United States or Canadian or Europeans, and which are illegal in the international arena, in terms of their extraterritorial application, in how the financial system has lent itself to the over-compliance with these unilateral coercive measures, and of course all the aggressions ranging from a sanction against a lawmaker for having been elected to a threat of a military operation against Venezuela issued by the commander-in-chief of the most powerful army in the world until recently, that is Donald Trump.
In Mexico, the Tamaulipas State's Attorney General office stated that 12 police officers have been arrested for their alleged involvement in the death of 19 people whose charred bodies were found near Mexico's border with the United States last month. Previous investigation had already found evidence of the participation of police force in the incident, in which 19 charred bodies were found in 2 vehicles. The massacre claimed the life at least 2 Guatemalan citizens, with the government of the Central American nation demanding that Mexican authorities apply the full extent of the law against those responsible. Mexican authorities initiated a move to clarify the events and identify those criminals responsible for the deaths.
In the events of January 22nd, at least 12 members of the state police participated, for which an arrest warrant was requested and obtained by a judge in the state.
These violations of the human rights of migrants are absolutely unacceptable. We must have, as in this case, the investigations of the National Human Rights Commission in order to proceed accordingly, not in order to establish responsibilities but to impute irregular conduct.
We will go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Perez Moya teleSUR. We will be right back.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study. Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR.
We are back in teleSUR News. In Haiti, police repressed a mobilization demanding the resignation of the president, Juvenal Moise. According to local media, at least one person was wounded by a firearm during the police operation against protesters who denounced the excessive use of the tear gas to disperse a peaceful march. The mobilization brought together unions, social and civil society organizations, which are demanding that the president complied with the constitution and step down at the end of his mandate on February 7. Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil have reported an increase in the numbers of COVID-19 cases in the last week, according to the Pan American Health Organization.
While in Mexico, cases and deaths continue to increase, particularly in the states that attracted significant tourism during the holiday season, like Guerrero, Quintana Roo, Nayarit, and Baja California del Sur. Colombia continues to report the highest incidence in cases, followed by Brazil, which is still seeing exponential increases in both cases and deaths in the city of Manaus.
On Wednesday, several thousand Croatian restaurants, bar, and business owners rallied in Zagreb against government coronavirus restrictions, which forced them to close. The protest in the capital was organized by an association of entrepreneurs who are demanding they be allowed to work while respecting antivirus measures. Business owners say their income has been devastated since they were ordered to shut down late last year during a surge in the COVID-19 cases in the country. Russia recorded 730 new infections on Wednesday, bringing the total to more than 230,000, while over 5,000 COVID-19 deaths have been reported. Government officials stress that antivirus measures must stay in place, although daily case numbers are down from a peak in late November.
We want our civil rights guaranteed by the Constitution, and nobody can take them from us. If the government is not able to secure them, let someone else do it. I am a coach for juniors in a basketball club in Sipenik, and because of measures and because of alleged grave threat from COVID-19, or let's say coronavirus, it is forbidden for children to practice sports. More than 90% of girls from my club can practice, and automatically they don't pay fees, and automatically I am left without income.
Namibia has sustained the current COVID-19 containment measures for another 21 days with minor adjustment. President Hage announced that the hours the current curfew applies will be adjusted.
As you may be aware, the current regulations will expire at 23 hours 59 tonight, 3rd of February 2021. The status quo will be maintained and extended for a period of 21 days, from 4th of February to 24th of February 2021. With regard to the restrictions of movement, curfew hours will be adjusted to begin at 2020 hours and end at 05 hours daily.
Rwanda's capital city will remain locked down for 7 more days in order to curb the spread of COVID-19, the government announced. The cabinet extended existing measures countrywide, including the current lockdown in the city of Kigali from February 3rd through 7th. Business will now reopen on February 8th under strict guidelines as the government moves to ease current measures. A ban of public transport will also be lifted. Kigali was shut down 2 weeks ago, owing into the surge in infections. At the time, health authorities report that the city of 1.5 million accounted for over 60% of confirmed cases since the start of the year. Tunisian doctors have expressed concern about the continuous increase in the number of COVID-19 patients, which is putting a strain on the country's fragile health system. The Ministry of Health is currently reporting 50 to 100 deaths a day, compared to the total of 50 between March and July last year, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to handle very serious cases. Medical personnel stress that patients can sometimes have a 72 hours wait before an intensive care bed open up. Meanwhile, the government announced the arrival of 94,000 doses of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines in February. Negotiations are also underway to obtain Russia's Sputnik V vaccine, which has just been authorized in Tunisia. COVID-19 cases are on the rise in Malawi, where local hospitals are struggling to cope with the second wave of the pandemic. In Blantyre, South Malawi, the Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital has turned at least 5 wards of treating other illness into COVID-19 wards. Despite this, some COVID-19 patients have to wait for a couple of days to get a bed. Last week, Doctors Without Borders, along with other partners, built another ward in a tent of the hospital ground for the patients. The organization reported that the number of coronavirus patients at the hospital increased from 12 to over 100 in the first 3 weeks of January. Meanwhile, the health minister has urged the population not to despair. Malawi is set to roll out its first round of the AstraZeneca vaccine to about 3.8 million people, or other 20% of its population, in about a month. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
We are back with you. On Wednesday, Joe Biden's administration announced that the United States is extending the New START nuclear arms treaty with Russia for 5 years. The announcement comes amid growing tensions with the Kremlin. Russia's President Vladimir Putin signed the extension on Friday, which means that the treaty, first agreed under the Obama administration in 2010, will remain in force until February 5, 2026. Russia's foreign minister welcomed the extension, stating that it ensures the preservation of key mechanisms for maintaining strategic stability. NATO also welcomed the announcement and expressed its support because it believes the pact contributes to international stability. The START treaty limits the number of nuclear warheads that can be deployed by the U.S. and Russia to 30% less than the limit set in 2002. In Spain, the Supreme Court has upheld the sentence of 133 years in prison imposed on the former Colonel Inocente Montano for the murder of 5 Spanish Jesuit priests during the civil war in El Salvador. The criminal chamber of the Supreme Court upheld the sentence handed down last September by the National Court after dismissing the appeal filed in the defense of the former colonel. The National Court tried to former military officer between June and July 2012 in Madrid. and considered him the author of 5 crimes of murder of a terrorist nature which occurred in 1989. Montano was Deputy Minister of Public Security of El Salvador at the time of the massacre. In Spain, thousands of people cited as the polling station officials for the elections in Catalonia are refusing due to the risk of COVID-19 infection. According to data released by the Superior Court of Justice of Catalonia, over 9,000 people called to participate into the electoral process presented appeals related to the risk of contagion, which represent close to 10% of those cited. In the city of Barcelona alone, more than 3,000 appeals have been received. The president of the Electoral Board of Barcelona assured the local media that these numbers have never exceeded 1,000 before, and stressed that it is clear that people are afraid of the pandemic. The authorities plan to sign up volunteers to make up for the absence during the vote. In Somalia, President Abdullahi Mohamed has begun a round of meetings with federal state leaders in the face of local dispute that has impaired the holding of this year's general election. The president held the first meeting of a 3-day summit with the leader of 5 federal states in the city of Dusamareb, 400 kilometers far from the capital, Mogadishu. The territorial leaders and the central government are expected to reach agreements to ensure the holding of general elections in the African country before February 8 in view of the fears of social unrest. Somalia has a complex system of indirect elections with the participation of traditional clans, which have been hampered by the difference between citizens' state governments and the central executive over electoral conditions. Residents in Myanmar's largest city, Yangon, held a noisy protest for a second night on Wednesday in opposition to Monday's military takeover. Banging posts and bangs and clapping loudly, residents made noise as they stood on balconies of downtown apartments, blocked or in the street with passing cars blaring horns. The military said the takeover of power was necessary because the government had no act on the claims of fraud in November's elections.
The military takeover is an insult. People were living peacefully and things were stable, and they have destroyed everything. They have insulted the people. So, as a citizen, I have decided to fight against this military junta until it ends.
The Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO is holding a high-level virtual event to launch the Ocean Decade, as well as highlight the upcoming challenge and opportunities. The world relies on the ocean for more than 50% of its oxygen, which the next 10 years could be critical for the ocean. In this regard, the United Nations has launched the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, a major global initiative of deepen our scientists' knowledge of the sea. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres opened the high-level event. Global leaders, UN agencies, and marine scientists are attending and speaking at the event. UNESCO aims to make ocean science more mainstream and also educate people on the importance of the ocean in our daily lives.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the fragility and vulnerability of our societies. To recover stronger and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we must stop degrading the environment we depend on. The ocean faces unprecedented threats due to human activity. By 2050, there may be more plastic than fish in the sea, and all the world's tropical coral reefs could be dead by the end of the century if we don't act now. Protecting and sustainably managing the ocean is essential for food, livelihoods, and mitigating climate disruption and related disasters. More than 80% of our ocean is unmapped and unexplored. Yet, ocean science accounts for a minuscule amount of funding. To restore the marine environment, we need knowledge, an ocean science revolution. Today, we launched the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. Thank you for watching.
que é o nosso governo hoje, periférico, pobre, favelado, preto, ele não existe. Não existe diálogo. Eles são fascistas, sim.
Sempre que há uma aplicação brutal e radical de um programa neoliberal, é necessária repressão, porque o neoliberalismo retira direitos sociais e o neoliberalismo precariza as condições de vida da classe trabalhadora.
Dismantling Brazil, Bolsonaro's a neoliberal.